Okay, so my name is Courtney Quintela, and I am doing a policy briefing debate with Katrina. And I'm starting off with my proposition, which states the federal government should recognize terminally ill United States citizens' right to end their own lives by physician-prescribed, self-administered lethal medication. And then I go into defining my key terms, which I won't go specifically, but I defined terminally ill, end of life decision, physician prescribed, self administration, lethal medication, federal government, United States citizens, and then the Death with Dignity Act. I define all of those. And then going off into my reason to change, which are my stock issues. My first issue is the legalization of all United States citizens on the right to decide on their end of life decisions based on their terminal illness will alleviate the unnecessary suffering of terminally ill patients through the hastening of death, which allowing patients the right to decide their own end of life decisions will assist in the rights given to United States by the way of the Declaration of Independence, in the way of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In the Declaration of Independence, outlined in the preamble, it states, "We hold a truth to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." My second stock issue is in accordance to physician-assisted and prescribed medication to terminally ill patients who are suffering to their inevitable death. The request from patients is voluntary and not forced. Patients should be granted with the choice on their end of life decision on allowing themselves their dignity, control, and peace of mind during the last days while suffering with an illness. This option of patients being allowed to make their own decision about their life will grant patients with emotional stability they will need when making a decision such as this. Being able to be in full control of the request that they are making and knowing the full process of their decision. My third stock issue, along with patients who should be allowed with the rights to make their own decisions regarding end of life, physicians, when approached with a request from a patient about assisting them in their decision to end their life, also have full rights to either accept or deny the request that is presented to them by the patient. A patient who is suffering from an illness such as cancer and their doctor told them that they have 6 months left to live and the last days of their life would be spent in a hospital suffering and fighting through it every day, most people would not want to have to go through these agonizing days of torture until their inevitable death. Some people want to have the decision to go to a physician who would assist their end of life process. With the same scenario above, although the patient might feel as though they want to go through with a decision like this, have to present the request to a physician who is ready, willing, and able. The physician can either accept their request according to the terms that they seem fit with the situation that's at hand. My fourth stock issue, in 9 of the 50 United States, in 9 of the 50 U.S. states, not including Texas, have law already in place for their states that allow the people living in these states the right to their own life when it comes to voluntarily making the decision to request the option to receive a hasten their death. Under this act is a process in place in which patients and physicians have agreed to take a request from a patient like this must undergo in order to be approved to end their life. This process in which the patient must undergo is extensive and thorough to confirm that indeed the patient wishes to undergo the process The process in which the patient must undergo is extensive and thorough to confirm that indeed the patient wishes to undergo the process after going through the safeguards and eligibility requirements set forth by the act put in place, being that they be mentally stable, the diagnosis is terminal, and they are an adult of 18 years or older and a resident of the said state where the Death with Dignity Act is implemented. This process shows just how thorough of the process a patient must go through in order to have their request taken out by a physician. It ensures the full confirmation by the patient and the success in completing the request. And my with a stock issue, although not the same circumstance in the United States, being able to euthanize our pets under requested and approved circumstances in which are deemed fit by the owner of the pet by a veterinarian. There are no legal restrictions implemented in the United States in which citizens cannot euthanize their pets under said circumstances that would be better for pet and pet owners. In this case, if a pet owner wanted to put down their animal in events that certain circumstances allow them to get to that point to make a decision, there are no laws in which you cannot, under good reason, euthanize your own pet. Just like there are no laws against euthanizing or putting down an animal, I believe that the right to be able to make up their own decisions on their end of life should be allowed. And that was it for me.
Okay, good. Okay, so my name is Katrina Sanders, and I will be opposing the proposition that the federal government should recognize terminally ill United States citizens' right to end their own lives by physician-prescribed, self-administered lethal medication. Point number one is that it will cause discrimination against other patients with a medical diagnosis. If the reasoning for the Death with Dignity Act is to respect life and rights, then why limit it to people that are terminally ill? There are people that suffer with chronically ill conditions every day of their lives, but to intentionally commit suicide as a way to remove that pain will not be right. The same goes for those that are terminally ill. Favoring one illness over the other could be considered discrimination. My point two is that a federal law would open doors to vulnerable groups such as elderly and mentally ill to request assisted death. So fears that legalizing physician-assisted suicide might lead to overuse do not seem to have been realized. Studies indicate that the population seeking physician-assisted suicide are not poor, depressed, or have untreated pain and lack of care, but instead, these are middle-class and educated individuals with access to good health care. The Death with Dignity Act will eventually pave the way for physician-assisted suicide to cover competent, disabled, and mentally challenged individuals. My third point is that it abandons medical physicians' ethics and morals. So physicians have many responsibilities, but intentionally taking a life goes against their ethics. In an ethics study conducted, 56.8% of physicians believe that physician-assisted suicide is ethically unacceptable, while 43.2% opted for another solution. A doctor's job in medicine is to preserve life and assist patients in healing. For example, physicians in cancer research aims to cure cancer. If a patient that is terminally ill with cancer chooses to end their life, then this is a missed opportunity to cure and find a cure for patients. My last point is that it could cause a misdiagnosis, that a misdiagnosis could push patients towards assisted death. So patients choosing assisted suicide will do so because of a treatable psychiatric depression. Physicians often are not adequately trained to distinguish a rational desire for suicide from an irrational one, which could lead to a misdiagnosis. In doing so, patients may believe that they have a short time to live and therefore request assisted suicide. This could result in unnecessary and unjustified death. So my conclusion is that the Death with Dignity Act is also known as physician-assisted death or suicide. This law allows competent adults that have been diagnosed with a terminal illness the right to request medication that would hasten death. For years, this law has been put into place throughout a few countries and several U.S. states. There have been controversies with both the public and government regarding this law. Critics of legislation acknowledge the problem of pain, but argue that the answer is not to legalize physician-assisted suicide. And that's my conclusion. Any questions from you? Oh, wait, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay. No, I was just going to say that hearing your everything that you said, like you had very good points, even though before we were before we recorded our argument, you were telling me that you felt like you didn't have like enough points or like enough issues to like coincide for your briefing, but I think that all the points that you had down were like strong. So everything you said was really good.
Yeah, I like yours as well. I was like, oh wait, how can I compete with that? Well, yours was pretty good. So,
Wait,
but,
I was horrible. Yours was really good, but should we start recording it?
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we can, and just I don't know how we save it. So